Football today is full of star players running down their contracts, maximising their personal gain while leaving their clubs empty-handed. Just look at Trent Alexander-Arnold's potential move to Real Madrid. His boyhood club Liverpool might lose him for free. The fans are livid to see a $100 million plus academy product willing to leave on a free transfer. Back in 2021, Grealish found himself in a similar predicament at Aston Villa, but he chose a different path. Grealish could have played out his contract and left for a top club without the club making a penny. Instead, he renewed his deal, inserting a £100 million release clause to ensure that if he ever left, Villa would be compensated handsomely. When Manchester City activated the clause, Aston Villa suddenly had a massive war chest. The club reinvested the money wisely, and what seemed like a devastating loss turned out to be the beginning of a new era. But how did Grealish become such a crucial figure for Villa? And how did his departure lead to the club's unexpected resurgence? These are the questions we'll answer today. Jack Grealish was born and raised in Birmingham, coming through Villa's academy and making his senior debut in 2014. From the moment he stepped onto the pitch, his playing style caught everyone's eye. He was a rare breed, an old school dribbler who could glide past defenders with ease without relying on his pace. Villa were in the Premier League at the time, but they were struggling. Despite Grealish's emergence, they were relegated in 2016. Many expected him to leave, but instead, he stayed to help Villa fight their way back. Over the next few years, he became the heart and soul of the club. His performances in the Championship were electric, and in 2018-19, he captained Villa back to the Premier League after winning the playoff final. By 2020-21, he was one of the best playmakers in the league, registering 6 goals and 10 assists in the league, despite missing a chunk of the season due to injury. Naturally, big clubs took notice. The moment Grealish signed a new contract in 2020 with a £100 million release clause, it became clear that he was preparing for an eventual exit. City, fresh off of winning the Premier League, saw Grealish as the perfect addition to their squad. Villa, however, weren't about to let him go easily. For weeks, there was uncertainty. Then, City finally triggered the release clause, and the decision was out of Villa's hands. Grealish became the most expensive British player of all time. For Villa, losing their captain and best player was painful, but suddenly, they had more financial freedom than ever before. Clubs often make the mistake of squandering big transfer fees. Spurs, for example, struggled to replace Gareth Bale properly after selling him to Real Madrid for an insane amount in 2013. They signed 7 players with the money out of which only Christian Eriksen turned out to be truly worth it. But Villa handled Grealish's departure differently. They took the Moneyball approach. This meant replacing an all-rounder like Grealish would require multiple signings to cover all he brought to the pitch. They signed 3 players who could collectively fill the void. Emiliano Buendia came from Norwich. He was a creative playmaker who had dominated the Championship. Then Leon Bailey was signed from Bayer Leverkusen to tackle the dribbling gap left by Grealish. The third player was Danny Ings, who came from Southampton, a proven Premier League striker to add more firepower and cover the goal output left by Grealish. Their biggest signing at the time wasn't a player, it was a manager. A few months after Grealish left, Villa made a bold move by sacking Dean Smith and bringing in Steven Gerrard. He had just led Rangers to an unbeaten league title in Scotland, and Villa hoped his winning mentality would take them to the next level. Initially, Gerrard brought energy and discipline. Villa climbed the table, and their January 2022 signings, including Coutinho, added quality. However, that momentum didn't last. The following season, results were inconsistent, and Gerrard struggled to implement a clear tactical identity. By October 2022, Villa had lost patience, and he was sacked. When Villa appointed Unai Emery in late 2022, many were skeptical. Emery had won multiple Europa League titles, but his spell at Arsenal had been underwhelming. Could he succeed at a club like Villa? The answer was a resounding yes. Under Emery, Villa became one of the most tactically organised teams in the league. They played with a clear structure, pressing smartly and using the ball efficiently. Villa's form in the second half of the 2022-23 season was exceptional. They finished 7th, securing European football for the first time in over a decade. Emery's influence wasn't just about tactics, he transformed the mentality at the club. Villa went from mid-table mediocrity to genuine contenders for European spots. By the summer of 2023, Villa were thinking even bigger than ever, bringing in high-quality players like Pau Torres and Youri Tielemans. The result? Villa were no longer just a team hoping to finish in the top half, they were challenging for the top 4. Their home form was incredible, and players like Watkins, Luiz, and McGinn became key figures in their success. For a club that had been in the Championship just a few years prior, it was a stunning turnaround, and it all stemmed from that £100 million sale in 2021. When Emery arrived at Aston Villa in late 2022, the club was still adjusting to life without Jack Grealish. And despite the money reinvested from Grealish's transfer, Villa had not yet found the consistency needed to truly compete with the top teams. Emery wasted no time in making an impact. Players who had been underperforming suddenly found their rhythm. One of the biggest transformations was in Ollie Watkins. Under Emery, Watkins became one of the most clinical strikers in the league, contributing with both goals and link-up play. Douglas Luiz, who had shown flashes of brilliance in previous seasons, turned into a dominant midfield presence. John McGinn, considered a workhorse with limited creative output, suddenly became a key figure in both defense and attack. Pau Torres, a player he had previously coached at Villarreal, slotted into defense seamlessly. Youri Tielemans, despite initial struggles, found a role as a deep-lying playmaker. From battling in mid-table, Villa surged up the Premier League standings. But now, they needed to prove they could sustain success. The 2023-24 season saw Villa competing in the Europa Conference League. Emery's squad rotation and tactical flexibility ensured that the team remained competitive in all competitions. At Villa Park, the club turned their home ground into a fortress. They went unbeaten at home for months, defeating several top Premier League sides and putting in dominant performances in Europe. By the halfway point of the season, they were firmly in the top 4, competing with the likes of Arsenal, Manchester City, and Liverpool. Key to their success was the depth of their squad. Even when injuries hit, players stepped up. The sale of Grealish allowed them to spread quality across the squad. Let's briefly mention the key factors that led to their rise over the past few years. Firstly, they focused on players who fit their system, ensuring long-term sustainability. Secondly, the decision to bring in Emery was a turning point. Having an elite coach transformed the team's mentality. Thirdly, with Grealish, Villa were often a one-man team. Now, they have multiple important outlets in different positions. Finally, instead of settling for mid-table comfort, the club aimed higher. They built a team capable of competing with the best. The results of this approach speak for themselves. Villa are no longer just a mid-table club. They are genuine Champions League contenders. Now, while Aston Villa have thrived since his departure, what about Grealish himself? In his first season, he wasn't an automatic starter, and his numbers were modest. 3 goals and 3 assists in the Premier League. Many questioned if he was worth the massive price tag. However, in his second season, Grealish found his rhythm. He played a crucial role in City's historic treble-winning campaign. His performances improved, especially in big matches, but he still wasn't producing the kind of numbers he did at Villa. At Villa, he was the main man. At City, he is one of many. And now, not even that, as he often watches from the bench. Ultimately, Grealish made the move to win silverware, and he certainly achieved that goal. But Villa's rise without him has been equally impressive. Aston Villa's resurgence is far from over. With the right moves, Villa could establish themselves as a top 6 regular, something that seemed impossible when Grealish left in 2021. When Grealish signed his contract extension in 2020, he ensured that Aston Villa would be compensated if he ever left. That decision, while heartbreaking for fans at the time, fundamentally changed the club's future. They grew stronger, they built a balanced squad, they hired an elite manager, and now they stand on the brink of their greatest era in modern history. So do you think Villa would still be here if Grealish had never left? Or was his transfer the first domino to the club's success? Let us know below.